Very, very slowly, the Mohammedan reached up and drew back the cloth that hid the lower part of his face. Oh, apparently, the hope for miracle had not occurred. A word of caution about beards here. Everyone knows that a beard covers your face, but what most people who decide to grow beards don't consider, and what I learned only now, was that if you grow a beard, the upper half of your face will get a lot of sunlight, while the lower half will get none at all, causing strongly varying degrees of tanning. If then, at some later point, for whatever reason, you have to shave the beard off again, the result will look interesting. I stared. I cleared my throat. So good to see you got out of the fire without any major injuries. His bushy eyebrows drew together. A storm cloud seemed to appear over his turban, and his eyes flashed. One word, those eyes seemed to say, one word more and I'll. Well, so good to see you again, I repeated, smiling as broadly as I could, fighting to keep my face straight. So very good. I suppose you want to see the others now too, chat, or whatever it is you men do in your spare time. Well, cheerio, then. His eyes flashed warningly one more time. Then he spurred on his camel, a monster of an animal that seemed just able to bear its enormous burden, and rode past me, towards Mr. Ambrose. I waited until he was well out of hearing range. When he was, I waited 5 minutes longer, just to be sure. Then I collapsed onto Ambrose's neck, biting on my thobe to conceal my laughter. Oh my god, his face, his bloody face, he looks like, he is so, oh my god. Asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk. That was just about the only noteworthy historical event during our expedition over the Nile Delta. The rest consisted of silence, stale bread and an occasional bowl of gruel around a campfire. We passed a few more crossings and a lot of peasants working in the fields. Finally, the vegetation grew sparser, and one day we were standing under a few lonely trees, looking out into the distance, and there were no more trees there, and neither were there bushes, grass, or any other vegetation. All there was were rocky crags, sand, dust and more sand, stretching to the horizon. The desert, I heard a cool voice beside me. Looking over, I saw Mr. Ambrose regarding the craggy landscape before us with narrowed eyes. Thank you, I told him. I think I realized that much myself. No reply. Don't take that as a criticism, though, I continued. Those are the first words you've said to me in more than a week. You're making progress. Now you've just got to remember that your vocal cords are actually good for something, and maybe we'll have a nice chat one of these days. No reply. Or not. Again, no reply. With a snap of his cane, Mr. Ambrose spurred his camel forward, forging ahead, into the desert. His top hat didn't wobble in the slightest from the camel's march on the rough ground, but remained still and steady as a black marble tombstone. Beware of the sun, he called over his shoulder. Beware of the sun, I muttered. What helpful advice. Why, thank you for mentioning that before you forced me to ride hundreds of miles through the desert. Sighing, I eyed the glowing, simmering landscape in front of me. Well, what was one desert? Just a stretch of land without trees, after all. It couldn't be that bad. I spurred my camel forward. Asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk. Please, please let me die. Mr. Ambrose glanced over at me. Be my guest. I wasn't talking to you, I groaned, wiping the sweat from my forehead. Or at least 1 liter of it. Another 6 liters remained, stuck to the skin under the scorching sun. They felt more like glue than perspiration. I was talking to God. I see. Blast him, how could his voice be this calm, controlled and, most baffling of all, cool in this abominable heat? Balefully, I glared at his face. His voice wasn't the only part of him that was cool. How is it, I demanded, that while I'm quite literally sweating my guts out, there's not a drop of sweat on your face? Not a single blasted drop. He shrugged. You just bloody shrugged. That's no bloody answer. He shrugged again. Gah, grasping the hem of my headscarf, I tried to pull it further down to get at least a little more shade, but to no avail. The sun had already heated up the cloth mercilessly. It was like a woven oven. Still, not a single drop of sweat. And you're not even wearing anything for protection. Certainly I do, he contradicted me, one long pale finger tapping the side of his black top hat. That's no protection against sunlight. At least it's not supposed to be. Why do you think the Arabs make all their clothes from white cloth? Because black attracts heat. Does it indeed? Yes. I see. He gave me a long, cool look. He didn't even have to speak the words out loud. I could hear them as clearly as if Moses himself had shouted them from the nearest mountain. Then why are you sweating, and I'm not? I was damned if I was going to give him an answer. Especially since I had none. You should put on a thobe and headscarf yourself, or you'll get heatstroke. I prophesied darkly, hoping to hell I was right. I don't think so. You'll start sweating any minute now, I warn you. Not even you can stay cold as an iceberg in this heat. Indeed. Yes, indeed. A hot breeze picked up, blowing sand our way. I coughed, and buried my face in my camel's foul-smelling neck to avoid the worst of the dust. Mr. Ambrose just sat straight in the saddle, ignoring the stinging grains of sand as if they didn't exist. When the breeze died down, he carefully removed his top hat, and began dusting sand off it. The sun now hit his perfect, sculptured face full on, and he still didn't even blink. The heatstroke is coming, I warned. Just you wait. In a few minutes you'll be dead on the ground. Don't say I didn't warn you. If I am dead, I will not be likely to say much. More than when you're alive, that's for sure. Silence. What a big surprise. Won't you at least try on a headscarf to protect you from the worst of the sun? I grumbled. I don't think so. On the contrary, I think you should rid yourself of that bathrobe and the remainder of your current attire. He sent a cold look at my form, bundled up in white linen. It is thoroughly un-English. So is being a miserable skinflint, I shot back. Are you sure you don't have Scottish blood in you? If it was possible at all for something already rock hard to stiffen, then his posture did. Quite sure. His tone roused my interest from its siesta, providing the first distraction from the heat for hours. So, where do you come from, exactly? Somehow, I didn't know how, he managed to lower the temperature of his gaze below the freezing point even here. That is none of your business. It is Scotland, isn't it? I knew it. No. The corner of my mouth twitched. Why would you want to hide it, unless it's really Scotland? Come on, admit it. It is not Scotland, he told me, his voice even stiffer and colder than before. Oh, really, are you sure? Quite sure. My home lies nowhere near Scotland. How far away is it, exactly? The thin line of his mouth thinned into an even thinner line. Quite far. Come on, how far, exactly? His left little finger twitched. If you have to know, 3 miles and 1,035 yards from the southern Scottish border. Oh, I see. I tried to keep my face expressionless while I nodded solemnly. It wasn't easy. That's incredibly far away, of course. Nobody could ever take you for anything resembling a Scotsman under those circumstances. Mr. Linton. I'm still wearing your wedding ring. I don't think you want to call me, Mr. in public, not unless you want to have some interesting explaining to do when we return to England. His eyes narrowed infinitesimally. Fine, Mrs. Thompson. Yes, sir. Right here, sir. I have a very important order for you. Yes, sir. I will obey your every wish, as is my duty as your. What am I currently? Wife, secretary, dog's body. The order is, Mr. Ambrose said, ignoring me completely, be silent. Yes, sir. Immediately, sir. Asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk. Did you ever hear the saying, be careful what you ask for, you might just get it? Well, I didn't. I had never heard of the damn saying in my whole life, but that didn't stop me from inventing it for myself the moment the sun began to sink behind the horizon. The whole blasted day I had done nothing but pray for cold, 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 cold. And now the desert was giving me exactly what I asked for, in concentrated form. The moment the sun's last warming rays vanished below the earth, the warmth seemed to be sucked out of the barren landscape like the juice from an orange. My skin, heated just a moment ago, became cold and clammy. I started to shiver. What's this? I demanded, wrapping my thobe more closely around me. What's the matter? The matter? Mr. Ambrose cocked his head. Whatever can you mean? The cold, of course. Why is it suddenly so bloody cold? Why shouldn't it be? There's no vegetation to hold the heat. It just evaporates when the sun sinks. And that doesn't bother you at all, is it? I demanded, glaring at him. His serene mightiness, Mr. Ambrose, still sat in the saddle like a stone idol of the god of commerce, not even showing the slightest sign of discomfort. Certainly not. Why should it? But about 10 minutes later, when he thought I wasn't looking, I saw him rub his hands together. He was mortal, after all. We'll make camp here, came his order about half an hour later. I nearly dropped from my saddle in relief. For a moment I considered cuddling up to the warm form of the camel, but the stink of the creature would keep me at bay till I was at death's door from freezing. Anyway, there was work to be done. Pitch the tents, cook food, set guards. Mr. Ambrose has pelted us with orders, and we hurried to obey. Luckily, Yusef, and not I, got the task of collecting the camel shit to light a fire with. You there, scout ahead as long as the moon is still up. I want to know what's out there. Be back in half an hour. And you, get my maps and instruments. I have to determine where exactly we are. Soon we were all huddled around the campfire that, while smelling rather peculiar, at least prevented our blood from freezing in our veins. There was warm food, companionship and even the occasional laughter. I didn't understand any of the jokes, since they were all in Arabic, but I laughed along anyway. Mr. Ambrose, to nobody's surprise, did not laugh. Finally, though, our evening's kettle full of warm stew ran out. Not long after, the day's camel shit ran out as well, and the fire began to die down. The men started to disperse, some gathering in groups around the warm, if stinking, forms of the snoring camels. Others with more sensitive noses just moved closer to the glowing remains of the fire and huddled together there. This left only few solitary people, the guards surrounding the camp in a circle, and Mr. Ambrose, and me, lying on the ground alone, separated by several feet of cold desert air. Shivering, I drew my thobe closer around me. Blast, I should have brought a woolen cloak, too. I glanced over at Mr. Ambrose. He was lying, stiff as a board, his arms folded in front of his chest as if daring the night to freeze him to death. I couldn't see his eyes, but I'd bet a month's wages on the fact that they were colder than the dark night around us. Yes, his eyes might be cold, but the rest of him, bloody hell, he has to be warm. Warmer than you, anyway. I cleared my throat. Dick. No answer. I sighed. Rick. Still no answer. Mr. Ambrose, sir. There was a moment of silence, then, yes. It's rather cold, sir. He didn't move an inch, didn't even turn to look at me. I had observed that much for myself. The others are all huddling together. Indeed. Against the cold, you know, huddling together helps keep the cold away. Is that so? Yes. I cleared my throat again, and waited for a moment, giving him the opportunity to continue. He didn't, preferring rather to lie stiff as a stiff and glare up at the stars. I cleared my throat for third time. It felt incredibly dry. So, I was wondering, why don't you? Now he did turn his head, very slowly, very deliberately. When his eyes met mine, I had to shiver again. Excuse me. I licked my lips. I said, why don't you huddle together with, someone, or cuddle, whichever you prefer. His eyes narrowed. I don't cuddle. You don't. Most certainly not, he proclaimed to the night sky, his voice cold and powerful, as if he was sitting in his office at home, and not lying in the desert freezing his toes off. And I do not huddle either. I absolutely refuse to participate in such an undignified activity. The cold is not life-threatening. I shall not succumb to improper behavior merely to decrease a temporary discomfort. Before I knew it, my hand had moved. We lay not far from each other, and it reached out, crossing the distance and coming to rest on top of his arm. Even with your wife. His arm shifted almost imperceptibly. You are not really my wife. Do you mind keeping up the pretense until it's not so freezing anymore? I lifted an eyebrow. Or would you rather that I go huddling and cuddling with one of the other men out there? His arm flipped in a startlingly fast movement, and his fingers closed around my wrist in an iron vice. Stay right where you are. No matter how icy his voice was right then, somehow it managed to make me feel warm inside, warmer than 1,000 campfires. His eyes gleamed in the dark, sending a shiver down my back. Oh, really? What will you do if I don't? He moved. I barely had time to see his shadowy form rear up above me, casting a shadow worthy of a titan, before he came down on me. His weight drove the breath out of me for a second, and that was all the time he needed. His arms encircled me, and we rolled to the side, wrapping us up in our blankets and clothes until they were an inseparable tangle. When we came to a halt at the foot of a small dune, I was still out of breath, and not just because of the impromptu wrestling match. My blood was pumping fast, and I felt tingly all over. Let go. Why? His cool voice slid into my ear, smooth and seductive. You wish to engage in huddling and cuddling, did you not? Well, we are. I tried to push him away, but his arms were so tightly wrapped around me, pressing my arms to my sides, that I couldn't even try. So I thumped my head into his chest instead. This isn't cuddling. Why, my love? Because I want to strangle you. Let's say it is a new version of cuddling modified and improved. Blast you, let go of me. No. I began to fire a barrage of bad language at him, most of which I had picked up from Arabian sailors and traders in the bazaar, and none of which I actually understood. Mr. Ambrose listened, not loosening his grip the tiniest bit. When I had finally run out of breath, he commented, you seem to have made a promising start learning Arabic. However, your vocabulary could be called somewhat one-sided. You can take your vocabulary and stick it up a camel's. I might have gotten further had he not right in that moment covered my mouth with a kiss. He'd surged through me, my body instinctively molding itself to his, growing softer, stopping to fight. No, that wasn't true. I never stopped fighting, but a moment ago I had been fighting to get away. Now I was fighting to get closer. From somewhere, I heard a low growl. My eyes, closed in ecstasy, flew open to look for the hyena, or lion, or whatever was lying in wait in the dark night. Only then I realized where the growl had come from, my very own throat. Slowly, my hands managed to crawl up his chest, until they had reached his face and could pull him closer. He made a low, masculine sound in the back of his throat, and an involuntary smile tugged at my lips. So, you murmured against my mouth, about the effectiveness of my modified version of cuddling. Yes. Are you still cold? Cold, is he kidding? Cold was forgotten. The concept of cold belonged to another universe now. No, I'm not. I didn't think so. You, arrogant son of a bachelor, you Ibn Hamar, 24, not according to my birth certificate. Kol-Air, 25. That would present slight anatomical difficulties. Kul-Kara, 26. I do not like the taste of it much. Mind your language. My disgraceful language apparently didn't bother him too much, therefore the next thing he did was pull me closer and press another kiss on my lips. Rolling over, he placed himself so that one side of me was shielded from the bitter cold by the thickest wad of blankets, the other by his body, and, gently breaking our kiss, he pulled me against his chest. Sometime later, I drifted off into sleep, suppressing a grin as I snuggled into him. Asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk asterisk tilde asterisk tilde asterisk over the next few days, a tacit agreement developed between Mr. Ambrose and me. We did our best to test each other during the day, me flinging examples of my ever-growing vocabulary of Arabic swear words at him, he building up a thick wall of silence. But in the night, different things happened. We would lie down next to each other again, and he would fold me in his arms, creating a small cave of warmth for me amidst the cold desolation of the desert around us. The whole night he would hold me like this, and not just for warmth, either. The taste of his lips on mine. Up until then, I hadn't thought it possible for anything to rival the savory scrumptiousness of solid chocolate. I had been mistaken. When, in the morning, he returned to his usual cold, standoffish, silent self, I sometimes asked myself whether I hadn't simply dreamed up his nighttime alter ego. But then the sun would go down, and the dark shadow of a tall man would stalk towards me. Lillian. Yes. Come to me. The nights passed. I suppose the days passed too, but recently I had started paying a lot more attention to the former than to the latter. We traveled at a slow crawl through the desert, or maybe we were whizzing through it faster than a racing horse. I didn't really know. In a landscape where everything always changed, blown away by the wind, it was hard to say where you were at any given time and how fast you were moving. How many days passed before it happened? I didn't know. I only knew that it was an excruciatingly hot day, and the sun was beating down on our heads with red-hot, iron hammers. In other words, a day like any other. That was the day on which it happened. We were just moving up the side of a dune. Unfortunately, it was the side that lay full in the sunlight. Ambrose was struggling, making grunting noises with every step. I supposed he was having bowel problems. He hadn't produced quite as much shit to burn yesterday as usual. Unfortunately, I couldn't very well ask his namesake to step into the breach. Suddenly, Ambrose stopped entirely, blinking, trying to rouse myself out of my heat-induced stupor. I saw something black right in front of me on the glowing sand. It looked like a cross between a crab and a giant spider, with a huge, sharp tail at one end. Wait a minute, I had seen something like this in an encyclopedia once, hadn't I? What was it called again? A scorpion. Yes, that was it. A scorpion, wasn't its tail? I frowned. Somewhere at the back of my mind I was sure there was something important I had to remember about that tail. But it just didn't want to come to me right then. Was it used in native medicine? Was it a delicacy in French restaurants? Yes, that was probably it. The French ate all kinds of weird stuff. The scorpion clicked its pincers menacingly. Ambrose took a step backwards. Oh, don't be a chicken, I told the camel, leaning down towards the scorpion. I told it in a very loud and clear voice. Piss off. The scorpion hesitated for a moment, then turned, scuttled away and dived into a hole not far away. There, you see, I patted Ambrose's neck. No need to get spooked. I'll protect you. Only when I reached the top of the dune did I realize that there might be plenty of reason to get spooked. I also realized that I probably hadn't been the reason for the scorpion's sudden retreat underground. Far ahead to the southeast I could see a yellowish something, like a sickly bank of clouds, hovering close above the ground. Far too close for it to really be clouds. At first I thought the thing wasn't moving at all, but then I noticed that the distance between it and a solitary rock ahead of us was slowly shrinking. Finally, it reached the rock and swallowed it up. I shivered. What's that? I asked. Yusef appeared next to me like a djinn out of a lamp. Only he didn't come to grant me 3 wishes. His face was grim. That's the devil's breath, Hannum. Does it smell? Worse, it bites, and chokes, and buries you alive. That's a sandstorm, Hannum. One of the worst I've ever seen. I eyed the sickly cloud bank doubtfully. It doesn't look like much. One corner of Yusef's mouth twitched in a humorless smile. It looks more impressive once you get closer. Trust me, Hannum. Quickly, he turned and barked a few orders in Arabic. Hurrying to the top of the dune, men began to dismount and make their camels sit down. Several removed their headscarves and started pouring water over them. Others quickly began erecting tents on top of the dune. What is this? What is going on? Bringing his camel to an abrupt halt out of a gallop, Mr. Ambrose slid down from the saddle and shot Yusef a menacing look. Explain yourself, Yusef. In answer, the other man simply pointed towards the sickly yellow cloud. I realized that already it was not quite so distant anymore. Yes, Mr. Ambrose demanded. What is it about that thing? It's a sandstorm, Effendi. And we have to stop, Effendi, to seek shelter until it has passed. Seek shelter. Mr. Ambrose's eyes narrowed a fraction of an inch. You do not honestly think that I will let this delay me, do you? That I will let a tiny bit of sand stop me from going on? The Arab sucked in a breath. A tiny bit of sand. Effendi, we are going on, Yusef. Not another word. But Effendi. Mr. Ambrose raised one, long, extended finger, and Yusef fell silent immediately. Taking another breath, he bowed his head. Yes, Effendi, as you wish, Effendi. Are you sure that going on is wise? I dared to ask when we had started down the other side of the dune. If he really thinks it's dangerous, shouldn't we listen to him? He gave me a look. One of those looks. Do you know the size of an average grain of sand? No, I had to admit. It is between 0.0024803 and 0.08 inches. Now, think carefully for a moment. Do you think I am going to let myself be stopped by something smaller than the 10th of an inch? No. Indeed, no. And that was all he deigned to say on the matter. Maybe he was even right. Maybe it was silly to get anxious just over a bit of sand. But whenever I looked down towards the increasingly fast approaching clouds of dust in the valley below, I couldn't help getting the impression that it was more than just a bit of sand. We had just reached the bottom of the hill when the rumbling started. What's that? I called, turning back towards Yusef. Thunder. Yes, Hannam, he replied grimly, glaring ahead. Out of a thunderstorm that didn't need lightning to kill. The rumbling grew, and soon it evolved into a continuous roar, like the sound coming out of the maw of a dragon too hungry to ever shut its dreaded jaws. Wind began to slap and batter against my thobe, and I had to grip my headscarf to hold it in place. The wind didn't bring any relief from the heat. On the contrary, it was so hot it might make you think the gates of hell had opened. It doesn't seem quite so small anymore, is it? I yelled over the racket. Mr. Ambrose was riding only a few paces beside me, but still I had to raise my voice to make myself heard. The cloud in front of us was growing larger by the minute now. From where we stood, it looked the height of a small house. A few moments ago it had only seemed to be camel high. What did you say again? 0.0024801 inches. 0.0024803 feet, he called back. Not 0.0024801. Oh, of course, that makes a hell of a lot of difference. No answer. If you haven't noticed yet, there seem to be rather a lot of these 0.0024803 inch obstacles which you think are so easy to overcome. Maybe we should stop after all. No answer. You are a stubborn son of a bachelor. I thought earlier you told me that I was the son of a donkey. That was before I ran out of Arabic insults. He turned his head to look at me. I would have said there was a stubborn set to his chin only, it wouldn't have been the truth. He didn't need to set his chin in a stubborn way. Its mere shape, hard and angular like a block of granite, was already more stubborn than others could ever hope to be. We can do this, no discussion, we're going on. A gust of hot wind struck us and ripped his top hat from his head. Shooting out, his hand grabbed it just in time before it was driven away over the dunes. Tell me, the roar in my ears had reached such a volume now that I had to roar myself to be heard at all. Have you ever been in a sandstorm before? Silence, or rather the absence of speech, with the storm winds wailing all around us, the very idea of silence was unthinkable. Well, my heart started hammering faster. In front of us, the storm was towering higher than the tallest houses of London, now. It seemed like a cloud no longer, but a solid wall of sand, waiting to bury us. Have you? No, but I have been in plenty of snowstorms. Meaning that snow makes you freeze, sand doesn't, so it can hardly be more dangerous. I threw another apprehensive glance ahead. Personally, I wasn't entirely sure about that. We had reached the bottom of the valley beyond the dune now. In front of us rose a small hill, and down that hill the storm came, buffeting, bashing, slashing, thundering. To my left, I saw a column of sand roar past and swallow a cactus hole. It disappeared from sight, as if it had never been. Please, Effendi. Yusef's voice was higher than usual, and scratchy, too. I realized that my own throat felt increasingly rubbed raw by the sand. Turning, I saw Yusef galloping towards us. Please, let us stop. We have to stop moving. The storm isn't dispersing, it's headed right towards us. We cannot. The storm bellowed, cutting him off. A moment later, a brownish cloud of stinging vapor drifted between us, and Yusef was gone. Frantically, I opened my mouth and tried to call out, but I caught a full mouthful of sand and choked. Coughing like a maniac, I collapsed over Ambrose's neck. The camel didn't seem bothered in the least by the raging torrents of sand around us. Blast, ruddy stinking skanky hellhole of her. I coughed again, and had to close my mouth. Bloody hell, if you couldn't even curse out loud anymore, things were really going down the drain. Pulling the neckline of my thobe up to cover my mouth and nose, I raised my head a few inches from the stinking camel's neck and tried to see where the others had gotten to. I blinked, thinking for a moment that there was something wrong with my eyes. The others weren't there anymore, neither were the camels, the mountains, the dunes or even the ground. Only a tiny circle of space around me had remained halfway visible. Beyond that, all had been swallowed up by a yellowish mist. A mist that was turning darker moment by moment. Bloody hell, where's the sun? It wasn't there anymore. The storm had swallowed it up like everything else. Like everyone else, too. Oh my god, everyone. Mr. Ambrose. No answer. Wildly, I looked from right to left if you could talk of directions in this semi-substantial world of swirling sand. Nothing, not even the fluttering ends of his black tailcoat. Mr. Ambrose, where are you? No answer. There was the roar of the storm and, other than that, utter silence. Curse him, if he's just keeping quiet to irritate me right now, I'm going to strangle him. But what else could I do? How could I know for sure? Well, there was one thing. Dick, my darling, come to me. No answer. All right, he really couldn't hear me. If he could, he would have definitely complained. Now, panic was really beginning to set in, and that didn't make the problem of breathing any easier. With my breath speeding up, more and more sand rasped down my throat. Ambrose, where are you, you bloody bastard? Grumph, grumph, came the answer from underneath me. I gave the camel a kick. Shut up, I didn't mean you. Taking my kick as friendly encouragement, Ambrose the camel hastened his steps. He seemed perfectly ready for a nice afternoon stroll through a sandstorm. I let him go where he wanted. I was more than busy enough clinging onto him and trying to find something, anything in the darkening maelstrom around me that pointed to a sign of life. Suddenly, there it was, a speck of black among the yellow-brown torrents. Mr. Ambrose. Did I hear an answer? I couldn't be sure, not over the roaring of the storm. Mr. Ambrose, it's me, it's M. Another violent fit of coughing overcame me. When it was over, the spot of black was gone. Bloody hell, you can't go on like this, Lily. No, I couldn't, but what else could I do? You can stop and think for a second, don't. Think about the men. What did they do when Yusef ordered them to prepare for the sandstorm? Of course, ripping my water bottle from the camel's saddle, I screwed it open and started pouring. In my haste, I wasn't careful. I emptied almost half its contents over the piece of cloth covering my mouth and nose before my sense returned, and I remembered that I still had to have something to drink later on. But still, the relief was immediate. Instead of forcing its way through the cloth into my throat, tiny particles of dust started to cling to the wetness outside. Mr. Ambrose. With new energy, I started shouting, clutching the wet cloth over my face. Mr. Ambrose, where are you? Driving the camel forward, I raced further into the storm, to where I thought I had last seen a hint of his black tailcoat. Mr. Ambrose. No answer. Of course not. Why would he deign to say anything, when he is so well practiced at keeping his lips nailed shut? It's only his life that is in danger, after all. No reason to suddenly become unnecessarily vocal. Then I saw it, a bit to my left, hardly visible through the roaring sands around me. A tattered piece of black cloth waved at me, like a black snake wagging the end of its tail. Did snakes have tails? This one did, anyway. One tail of a tailcoat. There he was, Mr. Ambrose, striding along as if the sandstorm blasting into his face were a mere annoyance. Somehow, he had managed to misplace his camel in the storm, but no matter. His powerful long legs were pumping, carrying him forward, his eyes were narrowed to slits, his top hat was somehow, miraculously, still on his granite head. He looked as if he could go on like this for hours. And then he fell. Mr. Ambrose. Whether he heard my cry I knew not. His knees gave way beneath him, and he slammed his hands into the sand, trying to hold himself at least half upright. His chest was heaving, racked with coughs I could hear over the cacophony of storm and singing sand. Mr. Ambrose. This time, he did hear me. Turning his head, he glared at me, as cold as he had ever done. I swear, for just a moment, particles of ice mixed with the particles of sand between us. Stay where you are. For just a moment, his voice drowned out the thunder of the wind. The power of the command nearly knocked me backwards off my camel. Then I gritted my teeth, and glared right back at him. Stay.